Today, WGC Explorers will give you another glimpse into the people behind the papers that have been accepted to the 2022 World Gas Conference under its Call for Papers process. The Call for Papers process allows every industry expert an opportunity to submit a project brief and have a chance to present at the World Gas Conference 2022, which will be held this year in Daegu, Korea. Submissions for the Call for Paper is open until January 28th. As a past member of the selection committee, I've always looked forward to this part of the World Gas Conference program. For the participants, the Call for Papers is a wonderful way to do three things: be engaged in the international sustainable energy conversation, show your expertise, and reach a global audience with your work. Today, I would like to welcome Jean-Francois Gauthier from GHG-SAT, who has had his paper accepted by the IG committees to present it at the World Gas Conference. Jean-Francois is the company's vice president, sales and marketing. GHG-SAT was founded in 2011 with the goal of becoming the leader of remote sensing of greenhouse gas emissions from any source in the world. GHG-SAT is developing a constellation of satellites to track emissions of greenhouse gases, notably methane, from oil and gas facilities and other industries around the world. Jean-Francois is the author of the paper, Monitoring Methane Emissions at Oil and Gas Sites with the Same Sensor on High-Resolution Satellite and Aircraft Platforms. Welcome, Jean-Francois.
Welcome, thank you.
Congratulations on your paper being accepted. Why don't you give the audience a brief description about yourself and then a short introduction to your paper.
All right, thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm an engineer by trade, but I've been working in business development for the last 6 years with GHG-SAT. So my previous life was in the rest of my career was in the space industry. And since I joined GHG-SAT, I have been traveling the world to promote the very unique services and products that we offer, particularly to the oil and gas industry. So what GHG-SAT is about is the monitoring of greenhouse gas emissions, particularly methane, using our own satellites, and also now an aircraft sensor that carries the exact same sensor as the satellites, but on a manned aircraft. And we provide this service to detect emissions directly from facilities, which is vastly different from what satellites used to do up until 2016 when we launched our first satellite. In the past, satellites would look at entire regions, entire countries, and global patterns, but our technology has pioneered the ability to look directly at individual sites and attribute emissions very, very precisely. For example, to an LNG terminal, or to a gas well or processing site. Well, the paper actually takes, of course, a little bit of a half step back to look at the history of our sensor in space, because we launched, as I mentioned, our first satellite in 2016 to prove this technology and demonstrate that it could even be possible, because to that point, it was just a project, just an idea. So there was a lot of skepticism that this could even be done. Our first satellite, Claire, demonstrated that it was clearly feasible and had tremendous success in identifying emissions directly from industrial sites. However, there were lessons to be learned, so we incorporated those lessons into the next 2 satellites that were launched in September 2020 and January 2021. And the paper takes the reader through some of the successes, some examples of detections especially at oil and gas sites, to show the precision of the sensor and the ability to attribute these emissions directly to sites. Next, the paper introduces the next phase of development that GHG-SAT underwent to adapt the sensor that flew on the first 3 satellites to fly on an aircraft, on a manned platform, and it introduces some of the early results that were obtained with the aircraft. The aircraft can detect emissions at 10 kilograms per hour compared to the satellite, which detects emissions at 100 kilograms per hour. So, so some examples of the results with the aircraft are presented. Some examples of tests that were performed jointly with the satellites and the aircraft at the same time are also presented in the paper. And finally, this really highlights the power of using different platforms at different temporal revisits. So in other words, at different frequencies. So you use satellites very frequently to detect very large leaks and then deploy the aircraft to find the smaller leaks, but you can afford to deploy the more costly aircraft less frequently because you're already doing the satellite monitoring. So, so the paper aims to highlight the collaboration between sensors and how powerful of a proposition it is to the oil and gas industry.
I understand you're going to launch some additional satellites this summer.
That is correct. So we have 3 satellites right now that are undergoing testing. So they're progressing very well towards launch in early summer, around the June timeframe. And just behind that, we're now gearing up to start building 5 more satellites for launch before the end of 2023. So we're really accelerating the deployment of the constellation so we can cover more and more sites worldwide and do it even more frequently.
You know, one of the big news that came out of COP26 was the Global Methane Pledge. And now over 100 countries have signed that pledge to reduce emissions. And the key first step is to quantify what's being emitted, monitoring that, and that's the basis for reducing it. So this is certainly timely.
There's never been a better time to address methane emissions. There's awareness at all levels, from industry all the way up to the highest levels of government. So the time is definitely now. I mean, methane has been clearly identified as a low-hanging fruit in terms of making an impact on climate. But not only that, preserving molecules of methane or keeping them in the value chain is something that is desirable for oil and gas companies, because of course methane is the main component of natural gas. It has a value. So there is a clear advantage in making sure that these molecules are not lost to the atmosphere. So and COP26 was a bit of a seminal moment for methane. And at around the same time, the UN agency UNEP announced a project called the International Methane Emission Observatory, or IMEO. And JSCSat is very proud, with the help of the Canadian government, the contribution from the Canadian government, to contribute with its data to the IMEO in order to help the international community address this challenge of methane emissions.
Is this your first time attending a World Gas Conference?
It will be my second time attending the World Gas Conference, although it will be my first time in Korea.
And you are looking forward to presenting your paper, I assume.
I am very excited at the opportunity to share the unique work that we do to help the oil and gas industry address their methane emissions. And needless to say, after 2 years with restricted travel, I'm very keen to do that in person with my colleagues from the industry, to be able to share thoughts and ideas in person following the presentation.
Well, this subject is going to be discussed across many sessions, and the one you're in is specifically focusing on the entire methane emissions and technology. So that'll be very exciting. I will be at that session. A final question for you. You heard my perspective as somebody who reads all these papers on why it's important for authors and the benefits of attending and submitting a paper to the World Gas Conference. I'd like to hear your perspective.
Well, the World Gas Conference is without any doubt one of the premier events on the agenda. So it is something that is a company that works a lot with oil and gas companies. It's an event that we circle on the calendar very, very early on. So we were very pleased and honored to have the paper selected and be able to present it because of the quality of the attendance that are present at the event, and the quality of the discussion that follows. Because with quality attendance, then you can get maximum impact. This is a very interesting event for us. And again, we're very pleased, very honored to have the paper accepted, and we'll certainly have several of our colleagues present also to be at the show, and have many discussions with our counterparts across the industry.
You'll hear more from Jean-Francois at the World Gas Conference in the Industry Insight session called Update on Greenhouse Gas Emissions, Measurement and Reporting Along the LNG Chain. To join Jean-Francois as a speaker, submit your paper to the call for papers. Now, the deadline for this is January 28th, 2022. Thank you for your time today, Jean-Francois, and I will look forward to meeting you at the conference.
Thank you so much. I look forward to it as well.
Great.